السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله على إحسانه وشكر له على تفضله وامتنانه، ولا إله إلا الله تعظيما لشأنه، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله داعي إلى رضوانه وعلى آله وأصحابه وإخوانه. أما بعد. إخواني في الله, tonight is our last lecture with regards to the issue of death and the grave. إخواني في الله, it is important for us as Muslims, always we need to think, we need to sit down by ourselves. We should take some small time, be it today, better even starting today. You sit down by yourself and you reflect on the creation of Allah Azza wa Jal. You ask yourself, why did Allah create all this? I was also created. What's going to happen to me today, tomorrow? When I go to the grave, when I die, what will my state be? When the Malakul Maut comes to take my soul, ask yourself these questions. Sit down by yourself. What will your state be in when the Malakul Maut comes and takes your soul? And you see the angels of Allah Azza wa Jal. And the people next to you, they cry, they break down in tears. You want to tell them things, but you cannot tell them anything. Then you're carried and you're washed. And you're carried to the graveyard. And in the graveyard, you're asked questions. Two angels, very severe, very harsh. Then you're shown either your door to Jannah or your door to the hellfire. It is incumbent for us as Muslims, Ikhwani Fillah, to always sit down and reflect. Wallahi, sometimes it's very scary when you just sit down and you ask yourself, tomorrow, definitely I'll receive news that my father has left this world. There's always a reason for the death, but definitely my father will leave this world. Ask yourself this, how will you, if you picture that, how will you be? You're told, Assalamu alaikum, your father was in a car accident. Your mother, she was poisoned. Your child, she burnt in a fire, or such and such. Always sit down, Ikhwani Fillah, and remember, regardless of how long you stay in this world, you shall leave this world. This world was not created for us. This is just a pathway to our eventual destination, be it the hellfire or be it paradise. So always sit down and think, those people who passed away and we prayed their janazah. Today there was a janazah in the mosque. Yesterday there's a janazah in the mosque. Perhaps tomorrow it's my janazah or your janazah. What will your state be, Ikhwani Fillah, when death comes to you? So the righteous people, they always think, they always reflect, and they always get scared by this event that is called their death. They're scared of the death of their loved ones, of their brothers, their sisters, their parents, their wife. The wife is scared that the day she leaves, the husband leaves her. The husband has been taking care of all her affairs. He pays the rent, the school fees, the food. He looks after everything of the family. She left her career because of this man. Then tomorrow, he dies. And the lady does not know what to do. She doesn't have any family members. She comes from a small family. She's not worked for the last 20 plus years. Then she starts going round and round and asking for people to assist her. She humiliates herself in the doors of people. People who will not dare speak to her when her husband was alive. They dare right now to violate her privacy and her respect. They come and tell her, why don't you do this with me? Why don't you try with me? She does not have any of that security because she's lost the protection that she had from her husband. You as a sister should always reflect, what will be my situation on that day that I'm asked that I'm leaving this world? My husband is no more. How will I be with these orphan children? Will I be able to take care of them? Always, Ikhwani Fillah, the righteous people, they remember the day that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take their soul or the souls of the beloved. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, كَيْفَ تَكْفُرُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَكُنْتُمْ أَمْوَاتًا فَأَحْيَاكُمْ ثُمَّ يُمِيتُكُمْ ثُمَّ يُحْيِيكُمْ ثُمَّ إِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. How is it that you people disbelieve in Allah and Allah brought you, gave you life when you were nothing, and He will take your soul after He has given you life, and He shall resurrect you again on the day of judgment, and bring you to account. So the righteous people, ikhwani fillah, they always remind each other about this issue of dying, of death. It is your day today, tomorrow is my day. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet, إِنَّكَ مَيِّتٌ وَإِنَّهُمْ مَيِّتُونَ. He says, "Oh Prophet, indeed you shall die, and they will die." Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا جَعَلْنَا لِبَشَرٍ مِّن قَبْلِكَ الْخُلْدَ أَفَإِن مِتَّ فَهُمُ الْخَالِدُونَ. I did not decree for any soul before you, O Prophet, eternal life. If you are to die, will they live for forever? كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. Every single soul shall test death. You shall test death. Your father, your mother, your wife, your children, everyone you love shall test death. This death that comes to you, will it come to you in a state that you're pleased with yourself, that Allah is pleased with you? That is the big question. May Allah grant us the death of La ilaha illallah, for it is the most important way of dying. Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, he says, كونوا من أبناء الآخرة. Be from amongst the children of the hereafter. ولا تكونوا من أبناء الدنيا. And do not be from the children of this dunya. فإن اليوم عمل ولا حساب وغدا حساب ولا عمل. For today in this world, ikhwani fillah, is a time of acting, of performing the good deeds. There's no account. But in the akhirah and the hereafter, there's no deeds. The door of amal has been shut. Only thing that will be remaining for you is to be held accountable for the time you are given in this world. You are a farmer. All of us are farming here. Grow that and harvest in the hereafter. You're growing your akhirah. You're planting the trees of akhirah now, and you shall harvest there. You grow an evil tree, you shall eat from the tree of Zaqqum, the evil tree. Or you grow a good tree, Fatuba, you'll get the tree of Tuba and from the other trees of Jannah. Ikhwani fillah, Yazid al-Raqashi, one of the righteous people, he used to say to himself, Wayhaka ya Yazid. As he sits with himself, he says, Wayhaka ya Yazid. Woe upon you, O Yazid. Man dha yusalli anka ba'da al-maut. Who shall pray for you after you die? Wa man dha yasumu anka ba'da al-maut. And who shall fast for you after you die? Wa man dha yurdi anka rabbaka ba'da al-maut. And who will please your Lord after you're gone? All these deeds, mashallah, these last 10 days, the brothers are fasting, the sisters are fasting, they're praying their prayers, the qiyamul layl. Who shall do for you these deeds after you die? No one cares more for you than your own self. Your soul is the most valuable thing that you all own, ikhwani fillah. So the Muslims, ikhwani fillah, they know that the only property they have in this world is their righteous deeds. The only material that they shall carry to the grave is the white shroud, and that will also most likely be eaten by what it's the cloth, the termites. Now, the termites on the ants. Abu Darda rahimahullah says, the thing that gives me the most sadness is I lost my beloved companions. I lost the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and his brothers. I remember there's a time I saw a brother, his father passed away like a week before. Then I see the brother laughing and smiling. I was like, subhanallah. How does this brother, after he's gone through that tragedy of losing his parent, losing a parent is not something easy, but this brother was laughing and smiling. Then I remembered what Abu al-Atahiyya rahimahullah says, whatever time a calamity befalls you, remember the greater calamity that befell the Muslims with the loss of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And the Muslims, they are able to overcome it. So musibah, ikhwani fillah, will always be there. So we as the righteous Muslims, as the good Muslims, we always remind each other that there shall come a day that we shall be asked and held accountable. He says, Imam al-Qurtubi rahimahullah, he says, وَجْعَلَ الْعَمَلَ صَالِحْ لَكَ عُدَّةً. Make sure that you have for this travel to the akhirah your good deeds. وَلَا تَتَمَنَّ مَنَازِلَ الْأَبْرَارِ. And do not wish for the stations of the righteous people. وَأَنْتَ مُقِيمٌ عَلَى الْأَوْزَارِ. And you are amongst the evil people. You do not wish for the station or the position of the righteous people, and you are a person who is spending time in sin. عامل بعمل الفجار, doing the acts of the evil people. وراقب الله في الخلوات, and always remember Allah when you're in privacy. When you're in privacy with your phone or with your internet, no one is seeing you. Always remember that Allah sees you, and do not have a lot of hope. One of the poets, he says, أترضى أن تكون رفيق قوم لهم زاد وأنت بغير زاد. Are you pleased that you are a friend of a people, they have carried provisions for the hereafter? You have your friends, they have prepared themselves for the hereafter. They have done عمل صالح. لهم زاد وأنت بغير زاد. They have these provisions, this merchandise they are carrying to Allah. Oh Allah, this is the good deeds we did. These are your friends, but you are going with nothing for the hereafter. You have not prepared yourself. He says, إذا أنت لم ترحل بزاد من التقى ولقيت بعد الموت من قد تزود ندمت على ألا تكون مثله وأنك لم ترصد كما كان أرصد. When you leave this world and you meet people who have been given highest levels of Jannah, they're taking all of Jannah, then you feel, why can I not be like those people? But those people, ikhwani fillah, they prepared and they entered Jannah, and they say to the people in dunya, لِمِثْلِ هَذَا فَلْيَعْمَلِ الْعَامِلُونَ. Like we acted, please act. So ikhwani fillah, we are still in this dunya. We are still in a stage, people in the graves wish they could come back and just pray 2 rak'ah. They wish they can come back and repent to Allah. We still have the time to improve ourselves. He says, Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, he says, تزود من الدنيا فإنك لا تدري إذا جن الليل هل تعيش إلى الفجر فكم من عروس زينوها لزوجها وقد أخذت أرواحهم ليلة القدر وكم من صغار يرجى طول عمرهم وقد أدخلت أرواحهم ظلمة القبر. Subhanallah. He says, take from this world, for you do not know if the night comes, are you going to be present at the time of Fajr? How many brides were beautified for their husbands and their souls were taken the night of marriage? How many young children were you hoping that they shall have a long life, that they shall have, this will be the next president or the next leader of my tribe or the leader of my family. وَقَدْ أُدْخِلَتْ أَرْوَاحُهُمْ ظُلْمَةَ الْقَبْرِ, and their souls has been kept in the darkness of the grave. And how many healthy people have died without a sickness? And how many sick people have lived for a long life? So always remember, ikhwani fillah, that you might be here right now, but your coffin is been prepared. And tomorrow, Salatul Dhuhr, we are washing you and we are taking you to Langata. So always live your life like it is a last moment. He says, whoever remembers death, ikhwani fillah, this world becomes worthless to them. And they always seek to rectify themselves. They always seek to be better than they were. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, أَكْثِرُ ذِكْرَ هَذِمِ اللَّذَّاتِ. Always remember this destroyer of pleasures, al-maut, death. You do not remember it except it makes everything narrow for you. If you are in a state of wealth, and if you're in a state of poverty, it makes it wider for you. Always remember هَذِمِ اللَّذَّاتِ. Whoever remembers death, ikhwani fillah, the scholars, they say, it will prevent them from evil sins. It will make their hearts softer. It will make them lose the happiness of this world. And every calamity that befalls them becomes less to them. The scholars, they say, if you want your heart to be soft, go visit the graves. Go also see how many kings have been buried there. How many rich people have been buried there. How many people younger than you, more handsome than you, people have been buried there. What is special about you? Your day is definitely going to come. So if you want a heart that is soft, ikhwani fillah, number one, he says, the scholar, always be present in the mosques where the sheikhs are giving wa'adh. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, whoever listens to a remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jal, he shall be blessed with 4 things. He shall be blessed with 4 things. Prophet ﷺ, he says, مَجْتَمَعَ قَوْمٌ فِي بَيْتٍ مِّن بُيُوتِ اللَّهِ يَتْلُونَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَيَتَدَارَسُونَهُ بَيْنَهُمْ إِلَّا نَزَلَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّكِينَةُ وَغَشِّيَتْهُمُ الرَّحْمَةُ وَحَفَتْهُمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ وَذَكَرَهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي مَنْ عِنْدَهُ. Allah says that no group of people will gather in the mosque to remind themselves what is in the book of Allah Azza wa Jal and to study what is there. إِلَّا نَزَلَتْ عَلَيْهِمُ السَّكِينَةُ. Allah will bring for them tranquility. وَغَشِّيَتْهُمُ الرَّحْمَةُ. Allah will cover them with His mercy. وَحَفَتْهُمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ. The angels will cover all of you. وَذَكَرَهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي مَا عِنْدَهُ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will mention you in a gathering better than this gathering. He shall mention you in the gathering of the angels. So 4 things for you to listen to the wa'd, and this makes your heart softer and makes you closer to Allah Azza wa Jal. Number 2, go to the hospital, ikhwani fillah. Or number 2, always remember death. Always remember that your time in this world is going to finish. Prepare yourself for that day. We've seen some of our elders, the previous generation. You go to the houses, they have prepared their coffin. They have the shroud in the house. They say, this is the shroud that I've prepared for myself. Every time they want to think of doing something evil, to con someone, they just go open the wardrobe. This is my clothes for akhirah. So the previous generation, they didn't have this capacity or this capability of just come to the mosque and you get your coffin. They used to be ready with their coffin, with the anut, with the sidr, with everything that's required for death. Number 3, we have over 10-15 hospitals around in South Sea. Go to the hospital, to the ICU. Wait there for 2 hours, 3 hours. Talk to the nurse, to a person who's about to die. Go witness that person who's going to die and see all the trouble they go through. They breathe heavily. Their eyes open wide. They close. They faint. They wake up. You say to them, say, La ilaha illallah. They do not understand a single word you're saying to them. They're in a state of intoxication. They cannot understand. Sakaratul maut. They're in so much pain. Look at the pain that person is going through. Then how he breathes his last. And the soul comes out and the eyes follow it thereafter. Look at how a person dies and sees how the Malakul Maut has taken that person's soul. You will not see the Malakul Maut, of course, but see through all the difficulties and the trouble. That person is dying and you say your heart will become hard after that. Imam Hassan al-Basri rahimahullah says, I saw a man going through the difficulties of death. It was so much difficult for him and the pains. I went back home and my wife tells me, my husband, come have some supper. He says, you stay with your food. Stay with your drinks. How can I eat? How can I drink after witnessing such an event? So, Ikhwani fillah, from amongst the things that will soften our hearts and make us closer to Allah Azza wa Jal is to always remember there is a day we shall leave this world. Our parents will leave this world. Our wives, our children shall leave this world. And from the most painful things that sometimes you can imagine, Ikhwani fillah, is perhaps that person who you have left, it is the last time you're meeting them ever. For that person is from amongst the people of Jannah, and you're not from amongst the people of Jannah, or the opposite of that. So the Muslims, they always pray, Oh Allah, grant us a good death and resurrect us in the station of the righteous people, and may we meet our family on the day of judgment. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَاتَّبَعَتْهُمْ ذُرِّيَّتُهُمْ بِإِيمَانٍ. And the ones who believe and their children follow them in belief, we shall make them meet in the hereafter. So that is the way of the righteous Muslims. They always remember death. They always remember that there's a time they shall be leaving this world. He says, Abu Darda rahimahullah, he says, whoever remembers death a lot, his happiness will reduce, and also his jealousy or envy for his fellow brothers will also reduce. Question we asked yesterday, Ikhwani fillah, Surah Al-Mulk, does it assist you with regards to Adhab al-Qabr? Yes, reciting Surah Al-Mulk every single night and acting upon the message in Surah Al-Mulk will assist you or protect you from the adhab al-qabr. The second question we asked, the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. One day the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he passes the grave or two graves and says, these two people have been punished in the grave and they're not being punished for something great. One of them was doing what? He's not cleaning himself well out of from urine. And the second one was moving around with namima, with causing discord. So he says, let me take this stick and put it on the ground, this plant. Perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reduce their punishment as long as this stick does not dry up. That's the hadith. Taib. Question number one, ikhwani fillah. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he kept the stick on the ground. True or false? He did. Did he do it for a particular reason or for just a general reason? He had knowledge that we are not able to attain. He had knowledge that these two people have been punished in the grave. So he did it for a particular reason. He knew that these two people have been punished in the grave. So he kept that stick and he said, perhaps Allah Azza wa Jal will reduce their punishment as long as this plant does not reduce. Number three, he buried so many Muslims at his time, alayhi salatu salam. Did he do this for every single Muslim that he buries, he keeps a stick? A plant. Did he do that for everyone? Or only this one situation or this one specific situation that he had specific knowledge for it? Have you understood the question? He only did it for this one specific time with the specific knowledge that he had. So the scholars, they say it is bad manners or it is you having a bad opinion of your brother that you bury him, then you bring a stick and you put over there. You're making the assumption that he's amongst the people who are being punished. And the Prophet ﷺ said, I pray to Allah that this person's punishment will be reduced in the grave as long as this stick does not dry up. He made a dua. Did you even make a dua? Number one. Number two, is your dua the same as the dua of the Prophet ﷺ? So it's not recommended, ikhwani fillah, for you to plant a tree with that intention that will reduce the punishment, for you're not the Prophet ﷺ and you don't have that specific knowledge. With this, ikhwani fillah, if there are any questions, we can answer, inshallah. We have concluded our lecture series regarding the death and the grave. On the 22nd of July, inshallah, we shall go to the third book where we shall look at the events of the Day of Judgment. Thereafter, we shall look at the hellfire and how the people of the hellfire will be punished in the hellfire. And thereafter, we shall look at Jannah and Nar. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Are there any questions? No. Maybe rephrase the question. It looks.
I'm asking, what's the punishment of the grave?
In the grave, when you're in the grave already, you shall be informed if you are amongst the people of Jannah or amongst the people of hellfire. So in the grave, you shall see your position in Jannah. You shall see your door in Jannah. And also you will see your position in the hellfire if you're not a person who is upright. So you shall know in the grave that you are amongst the people of Jannah.
So my question is,
you'll still have that fear. You'll still have that fear, most likely, because the only person who's allowed to talk on the bridge, on the Sirat, are the prophets. And the only thing they say, Allahumma sallim sallim. Some people will cross as fast as horses, as fast as lightning. Some will crawl, and some of them will fall in the hellfire. So you're never assured that you are in a state of happiness and joy until your first step is in Jannah. That is when you get the comfort. فَمَنْ زُحْزِيَ عَنِ النَّارِ وَأُدْخِلَ الْجَنَّةِ فَقَدْ فَازَ. So you have to pass that stage of زُحْزِيَ عَنِ النَّارِ, that you have passed the hellfire. So the hellfire you have to pass through that sirat. So you will not have that comfort until you have your first step in Jannah. Now, two more questions. Now, Sharifuna. No difficult questions. Shafa'a.
So how does that, how do they, because you've already been told you are from hellfire, and then someone will do for you shifa, for example, Rasulullah.
Alhamdulillah, that's good news for you, isn't it? So you are expecting to be amongst the people in hellfire. Then Allah, out of His mercy, He told some of His servants, you're given permission to intercede for whoever you wish. And those brothers, they intercede for you. They know, for example, you used to pray with them or you were good to them and they intercede for you. So Alhamdulillah, that's good news for you and you go higher. Also some people will enter Jannah, other people will intercede for them and they go even higher in Jannah. Now,
Inside the Jannah they can do intercede.
before you enter Jannah, they can intercede for you and you go higher and higher. Even Allah, out of His mercy, can even raise you higher and higher and higher in Jannah. I was asked yesterday the question, Jannah you enter with your good deeds, true or false? You enter Jannah with the mercy of Allah. But your level in Jannah always rises because of your deeds. So your deeds matter a lot, ikhwani fillah. If you ask for Firdaus, yes, sometimes, wallahi, it's not a bad thing, but ask for Firdaus, yes. As Muslims, we're supposed to ask for Firdaus. But you also have to work for that Al-Firdaus. That Firdaus has competition. It has competition. It has the likes of the prophets, the Salihin, the Sahaba. All those are your competition. So when you ask for Firdaus, make sure you're amongst the people you have acted like those people acted. Yes, I'm not telling you to lose hope. But also, if you want Al-Firdaus, ask for it, but also act to get it. Number one. Is it? Is it haram for you to book a place where you want to be buried? The only place Muslims should be wishing to be buried is the city of Medina, in Baqi'. That's the only place you should always wish as a Muslim to be buried. As for us living in here, we should be buried in the Muslim grounds. Not like the other non-Muslims they bury themselves in the farm or such things. The people in the grave, they talk to each other. They get relief when their brothers are next to them. So the brothers, they talk to each other, they mention stories, they tell each other stories. And sometimes you as a person, you can even see them in your dreams that, this deed helped us a lot. So it's good to be buried together with the Muslims. Now, final question. You've already asked. Okay, Bismillah.
The question is talked about Sakratul Maut. When a person is dying, maybe this person is also good and then reminding him the Shahada. And maybe he did not say it, or maybe because of the pain that is going through the Sakratul Maut. So sometimes some people start developing that negative idea whereby this person is not a good person. If he dies that, so will you say that person has refused to say La ilaha illallah in his last years and he died already?
It's a different question. He says some brothers, they're not able to say La ilaha illallah because of the pain and the anguish they go through. Correct? Number one, we talked about the adab, or the behavior that's required of you as a Muslim when your brother or sister is dying. You're not supposed to command, number one. Don't command, don't say, that's a command. Just repeat, La ilaha illallah. That person will hear you and repeat after you. Number two, whatever you see on the deathbed, or you see when you're washing the dead person, keep it a secret. Keep it between you and Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, says, whoever keeps the secret of a Muslim, Allah will keep his secret. So consider that as a secret between you and Allah Azza wa Jal. And leave the rule for this person for the hereafter, for Allah. It's not for you to rule. Perhaps he said, La ilaha illallah, you did not hear. So there are many probabilities. So always think good of your brother and leave the rest to Allah Azza wa Jal. Now. It's okay. Sometimes you can tell stories of what you see in the washing area, but you speak generally. Like Sulaiman, what have you seen when you're washing mate? You can give us some stories. There's sometimes, some people, they come, they have a very beautiful smell. The smell fills the entire place of the janaza. You've experienced that? Hardly, not yet. But that happens. Sometimes someone has an evil smell and they become so black so quickly, like they died 2 months ago. Some people, they died 2-3 days ago, but they're still fresh. So you see many things when you're washing a dead person. You have to be a person who's strong, who is able to keep his mouth shut and not cause any friction or divisions or problems in the families. Now, any other questions relating to death? Now, Haji.
About the grave, like in Western countries, even the Muslim graves, they have those labels. Is it allowed or it is haram?
It's not recommended to keep labels on the graves, but it's allowed. It's not recommended, but it is allowed. If you do it, there's no harm. Now, are you going for Umrah or Hajj? You're going for Hajj? Well, that's just for the mosque. Now, on the day of judgment. On the day of judgment, you shall meet with your relatives. In the grave, I don't know. In the grave, I do not know. Now, he's asking, number one, some people request to be buried next to a particular person, a person they love or something. You have a good example in Aisha radiallahu anha. Aisha, the husband to Aisha was buried in her own room. Who's the husband to Aisha? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The father was also buried in the same room. Then Umar is stabbed. Umar was stabbed in the Salat Fajr. Then he sends and asks for permission to Aisha. Oh Aisha, can I be buried next to my 2 companions? Because in the entire life of Islam, it was always Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came with Abu Bakr and Umar. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he left with Abu Bakr and Umar, always together. So you asked, can I be buried with my 2 companions? Aisha radiallahu anha says, I had left this space for myself to be buried next to my father and my husband, but I give it today to Umar. So it's allowed for you to be buried next to someone you love, number one. Number two, yes, sometimes you recycle the graves. If the graves, they've already turned into bone. So you keep the bones aside and you keep that space for another Muslim. But sometimes you can open a grave, they died years ago, Hafidul Quran or Shaheed, and you find them the same way they were buried like an hour ago. They're still wet, they're still bleeding. That grave, you leave it as it is. You do not do anything to that grave. You can use another grave. Last question. No. They burn what? Why do they do that? Rumors we don't work with. No, as Muslims do not burn. As Muslims do not burn. The earth will eat all your body, your flesh, and all your bones except for one particular bone. I think it's called the clavicle bone or something that will remain. Now, question? Now. Good question. Very good question. Are women allowed to visit the graves? Number one, the problem we have I think it's in Nairobi. I've not seen this problem anywhere in the world. During Corona, the mosques were closed. So someone dies, we go bury. It's the work for us as men, as the hadith of Atiyah says. But the women follow us. This is a munkar that's happening in Kenya. You come find the men in the graveyard and you find the women next to you. Sheikh, this is not allowed. Whoever of the brothers has some money, keep security over there to stop these ladies from going to the graveyard. It's not their job. It's for us as men to do that work. So women should not follow the janazah. That is not allowed. Number two, we as men, we as Muslims were prohibited from visiting the graves when the Prophet ﷺ started his risala. Then Allah allowed us to visit the graves. So we are recommended for us to always visit the graves. If you're going towards Karen or Langata, make sure even 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you pass the grave. The dua is written clearly on that sign. You make the dua for the Muslims. It's always recommended for us as men to visit the graves. As for the women, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ زَوَّارَاتُ الْقُبُورِ. Allah has cursed the women who make it frequent to visit the graves. Some scholars say this hadith is weak, some say it's authentic. So some scholars, they've said it's haram for the women to visit the graves. Other scholars have said it is allowed. The correct opinion, and there's no doubt about it, women are allowed to visit the graves, but they should not make it a habit. The evidence for this is one day the Prophet ﷺ passed the graveyard and he was finding a woman crying and sobbing a lot. The Prophet tells her, be patient, be patient. The woman says, you don't know what I've gone through. And the Prophet goes, ﷺ, he goes away. The woman is told, you know who you're talking to. You're talking to the Prophet ﷺ. Says, what have I done? And she rushes to the house of the Prophet ﷺ and says, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was you. The Prophet ﷺ says, إِنَّمَا الصَّبْرُ عِنْدَ الصَّدْمَةِ الْأُولَى. You should be patient when the first hit hits you. This woman was visiting the grave. The Prophet ﷺ did not rebuke her for visiting the grave. Aisha radiallahu anha, she asked, Ya Rasulallah, when I visit the grave of my brother, what dua should I make? The Prophet ﷺ says, say this dua, Assalamu alayka, and he says the dua. So if Aisha was taught the dua of visiting the grave, and she's a man or a woman, she's a woman, it means that she's allowed to visit the grave and to make the dua, and she's the one who narrated the hadith. So the scholars who said that it's not allowed for a woman to visit the graves, that opinion is very weak. If you're to combine both hadiths, it's making a lot of visits to the graves. That is what is not allowed. Or choosing specific days, that every Friday I go visit the grave, that's not allowed. Visit the grave anytime. Even right now, just go, if the gates are not locked, and you visit the grave. Now. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.